Welcome to another edition of the Resilient Living Podcast, a show dedicated to improving quality of life for both people and planet through liberation and independence, moving from surviving to thriving and living life on your own terms.
All right, I think that there's a lot of trouble, a lot of things going on in our lives, a lot of unhappiness. And the question you have to ask yourself is, are we the ones contributing to this ourselves? Is there a different way? Maybe is everything that we're doing in our lives essential to our survival? Are these things really helping us out? Is this bringing us more joy, more happiness? Are they serving us or are we serving them, right? All these possessions and all of these things we got. And what are we supposed to do? Just live a minimalistic life where we get rid of everything? What if we looked at that a different way? Now, I don't have problems with minimalism, but I have some questions. I have some things that maybe we can incorporate, we can hybridize, where we can marry minimalism with what's called essentialism, essential living. And we need to ask ourselves, what is essential in our lives? So we're going to do just that. So to start off, I started writing an article years ago. It was called Mountain Money Mentality. And in that article, I was looking at what it would be like to live in the wild, right? That's one of my questions I have here on my notes is living in the wilderness versus civilized living. And in that article, what I was reading about is what would you do if you had to go? Now, this was something that I actually considered myself when I was about 18 years old. You know, I think when I was like 16, my dad started paying me from under the table. He started paying me by check. And then I started to notice how much the government was taking out of me. And I started to look at that and say, what the heck is going on here? There's potholes in the road and some of the street lights don't work. We grew up in, a bad part of town when we had to come back from South America, where I used to live, and we came back to the United States. And it wasn't very friendly, and it wasn't really nice of a place. And it confounded me because that's what my father told me was that, there's certain things, two certain things in life: death, you are going to die, death and taxes, and that's what keeps the roads and the lights on. And I'm looking, the roads suck, and the lights, they're not always on. They could use some repair. So I looked at this and I said, you know what, if this is life, then I'm going to leave and I'm going to go live in the mountains. I'm going to be a mountain man. And I started writing an article a couple decades later, and I said, well, entertaining the idea again, what would I need? And in that moment, I remember telling one of my friends, an older guy, and he says, he was a cowboy guy, and he says, instead of backpacking with all those essential things that you think you need, and I started giving him a list of things that I would do. He was intrigued by my actions. And I could tell I was serious. And he said, why don't you get yourself a pack mule? That way you can throw your rifles and your pots and pans and camping gear and stuff like that and just walk, instead of doing it, being a leather tramp, carrying everything on your back. Now, that was a wonderful idea. But really, when I started thinking about it, all of the things that I thought that I would need, a gun. I would want a rifle so I could hunt. I'd want a very good rifle. I wouldn't buy just something cheap because this has to do with my survival. This is essential, right? I need a good hunting knife, a good hatchet, a machete, a sleeping bag, a tent, cooking stuff. And would I go buy a cheap tent at Walmart? Heck no. I'd go down where we have here is some high-class camping places, let's just say that, where it's about $400 or $500 back then for a 4-season tent where you can sleep in the snow. You can go all year round. So these are the point that I want to make with all of these things is if it came down to my survival, the essential things that I would need on my back or on my pack mule, I would buy really good stuff, and I would think very, very strongly and very acutely and carefully about what it is that I got. So when I think about living in the civilized world, why do we spend so much money on things that aren't even essential to our survival? What if we took that mountain man mentality and we started to incorporate that here in the civilized world, where we can look and say, hey, let's stop buying a bunch of stuff basically that we don't need, right? This is the stuff that's probably destroying our lives, taking away our happiness, robbing us of our time, and robbing us of our lives. So we need to take a look around us. Are we struggling by design is my next note here. And I think so. We look at around us. The car I'm driving right now, it needs gas. Back in South America, where I used to live in a third world country, I rode a horse to school every day. We actually rode a horse and buggy to church when we used to go to a church out there. Like many of the locals, that's what they did. We plowed with the horses. I remember being a young kid, with a strap around my shoulder, just like the Amish, and the horse-powered plow, one little blade, and that's what was flipping the dirt for us to go grow the food for that horse to eat, for growing grain for our chickens, right? We used to have a baling machine that was powered by horses. The horse would walk around in a circle. You stuff hay on the top of this machine. It was powered by a gear, which was powered by the horse, and it would spit out bales of hay. We did not buy, from my memory, we did not buy our own hay. We produced almost everything that we needed. We were producers instead of consumers of our life, right? Instead of being consumers out buying things that with no nutritional value and having to work for a piece of paper and trade for stuff that, like I said, is literally probably killing you or causing disease. It doesn't really even taste that good. Very, very poor quality. It doesn't make sense, does it? So I think we need to ask ourselves, is this really essential? Is this whole lifestyle design on this freeway I'm driving in right now? Pardon the background noise too, by the way. I'm coming back from a day at the beach, and I know it's wintertime, but I had to get away today. I took some time off. But yeah, all of these concrete buildings and everything, all the water that's washing down the drains and going to the ocean, is this essential? Is it to our survival? It's actually detrimental. It's destructive. That water should be gathered inside of pools and stuff in places, and water reservoirs to soak back down into the groundwater at least. But no, our design is completely backwards. So I want to move forward with minimalism versus essentialism. So when I think about back to the land movement, the way I used to live, is it essential? I think, yeah. I think the difference now, don't get me wrong, guys. Like I said, I love minimalism, but my definition and my experience of what others are doing with minimalism means to get the least amount of stuff possible and outsource things, just borrow things, rent things. But when you're living off the land and you're living a life of a producer, you need a lot of machinery. When I look at this and I think to myself, like a bread maker, right? Is a bread maker essential? Probably not. But if you're in the city and you're working your rear end off and you don't really have the time, probably so. If you want fresh bread, I personally don't care for bread. I think it's the carbohydrates and stuff makes me even fatter than I already am. But these are things, if you can eat bread, and you can bake your own bread, and you can actually use your bread to barter with. You can start selling it. You can actually start a little mini side hustle of bread making. And you don't think that that's possible? You ever smell fresh baked bread? That stuff stinks. It goes into the nostrils and stinks lovely, something of love. You can actually start selling stuff to your neighbors to actually break even, right? So you wouldn't have to actually work that hard for your money. Maybe you can start incorporating such things as brewing your own kombucha, making your own smoothies. There's all kinds of different things that you can do where you're not necessarily, I would say, smoothies, but you can ground your own flour inside of these high-powered, nice blenders. I've got a juicer. I make my own fresh squeezed juice. And I think it's actually smoothies as well. You can actually make your own iced coffees and start a little stand, depending on what part of the country you're in or what part of the world. And you can actually make a very small living. In fact, if you did all of these combined with a couple of other things, growing your own food, selling seedlings, selling seeds, selling actually the produce, baking bread, making yogurts and stuff like that with what is this? These pressure cookers, these all-in-one air fryer pressure cookers, the Instapot, I think it's called, where you have perpetual yogurt. You can actually get, once you have the culture set up, you just take a spoon of this, it's a couple teaspoons, put it in this machine, which you just push a button, put a certain amount of ingredients in there, and it makes yogurt for you. You just keep going and going and going. The only thing you have to go do is buy some milk and a little bit of supplies. And for the cost, for pennies on the dollar, you can end up making gallons. So are these things essential in life? Eating great foods and things like that, to me, it is. And when I think to land, would it be essential to have a piece of land? I think, yeah. I think that there's no place for us to go to in life anymore with the rules and regulations. Being the mountain man that I wanted to be, I'll bet you the game warden would have found me at some point, and they probably would have told me, hey, you can't be out here living like this, dude. You got to have a permit. Which sucks. I don't know why I'm laughing at that. I guess you got to laugh. So, yeah, I look at the accumulation of useful things, and again, not talking smack about minimalism. I think that we should hybridize our lives and grab the best of the best and find out what works for us and what doesn't, and go from there. So the bottom of the line of all of this information that I'm telling you guys is that life doesn't have to be a struggle, and I think a big key to not struggling in life is essentialism. So when we think about why would we be struggling, right? There's inflation right now here in 2021. That's because we need a lot of things, right? We have to go buy things. But what if we lived essentially? What if we didn't need to buy many things? They're groceries. You produce a lot of your own food. You became a producer instead of a consumer, right? What if you didn't buy new sneakers? What if you went down to the thrift store, buy some sneakers? Sure, they might be a little beat up and maybe a little dirty. You can actually throw them in the washing machine and clean them up, and they look quite nice. I found $60 pairs of shoes for like $5. Some of them still had the tag on them. Those were probably about $10 at the Goodwill. I think the rip-off Goodwill, we should call it. Pretty expensive nowadays. But when we start looking at all these goods and services and things that we need, if we started to accumulate and acquire skills to fix things ourselves, to repair things, to maintain things, so we didn't have to buy a lot of things. Maybe there's a practitioner that's talking to you right now who lives in a tiny house, aka travel trailer, in an 8-foot by 29-foot travel trailer that doesn't take a lot of heat to heat up during the cold winters, which we're experiencing right now, which I think is cold. It's like probably 60 degrees. Oh, it's so cold. This is like an Oregon summer, people. And I'm over here complaining. So, but the point is of all of these things that if we incorporate these into our lives and we start to look at what's essential and start practicing these things, life actually gets pretty easy. How do you guys think that I was able to take off? Today is December 9th at the time that I'm recording these. I record my show in batches when I'm not really working on in my construction business, and I utilize every time that I have. How do you think I'm able to just take off and go spend the day at the beach? Right? How is this even possible? It's possible because I live essentially, because I practice minimalism and essentialistic living. I don't go buy things just to buy things. You know, I just heard a thing of doing some research that it releases dopamine for people to go shop and spend their money. And they'll go out and it's not even buying the goods, it's the anticipation of buying the goods. That's the fulfillment that people feel. So yeah, pretty crazy. If you take and you stop spending this time on unnecessary, unessential things, I think you start to get the time in your life where you're able to actually take time off, and you don't have a lot of expenses. A lot of the money you get, you pocket. But you know what I want to talk about? It's not all just about money and about physical goods. I'd like to talk about your mind, what you're exposed to. What are you exposing yourself to? A lot of the negativity, are these essential? Are the people in your life that you're talking to essential? I think we need to do an extended show because I am running out of time with this. I think I've done gone too long on my podcast here. But what I want you guys to think about is how many TikTok and Instagram and Facebook videos, YouTube videos, and Netflix shows that you watched with your time. Is it essential? Is it really helping you? Maybe it relaxes you a little bit, gives you a chuckle. But think about the mental place in your mind, just like your home and all the physical goods that you own. You only have so much capacity in your brain, and that's being used up. That's being exposed to things, that these thoughts that you have that will keep perpetuating, puppy dogs farting and maybe some sexy woman that you saw or man on the internet, and you start looking at these other people's lives, how extravagant they live, and you wonder, wow, people must be lucky, even though probably the majority of them are lying, right? They went and rented a Lamborghini so they can lean against it, and rented 2 girls or 2 guys, very buff dudes to stand there and make themselves look good so that you pay money to listen to these people, the so-called wealthy and successful people. So what you expose yourself to spiritually, emotionally, physically, and the things that you procure in your life, the things that you surround yourself with, I think are definitely weapons against you. And if we could turn that around and practice living minimalistic, more I would say essential. I hope I made that clear today of why I think essentialism kind of outdoes minimalism, because there's a lot of things that could actually start serving you. And that's what essential, I think, living is having just the things, in my definition anyways. I'm sure people have theirs. But living your life with things that serve you and not having to have very many things. As I said, living in a third world country, if we were exposed to these type of things and see the way other people live firsthand, you would get to see, wow, you're not going to die. You can actually live. And you can easily come back to all of this life that we live here. You can do a little experiment with yourself to see, do I like it? It's completely free. You don't like it, go right back to what you were doing. The thing is that there is a choice to be made. We are not stuck here. In fact, a lot of the suffering and struggling that we're experiencing in our lives right now. And things are getting pretty bad, people, and they may get worse. And it's only going to get harder. But does it have to be that way? We need to ask ourselves, is essentialistic living, essentialism, is that something that we can incorporate into our lives so we don't have more struggle, that we can experience more flow? That maybe we could just take the day off, since it's going to rain, which is happening right now anyways, part of that background noise. But we'll be able to just take off and go maybe to the beach, open up the back of your truck, relax, maybe edit some videos, maybe get some thought, read a book, take some time for yourself, educate yourself. Maybe you want to do some life improvements. You have that time, you have that ability, right? You have that choice to be made because you've placed yourself in an area where I guess we could call this the new rich, where you don't have to be a millionaire. You don't need that many things. You don't need that big giant house. What you need, what you want maybe, is the time to be able to take off whenever you want, to focus your interest on things that you're actually interested in, instead of being bombarded and smacked in the face with all of these infomercials and commercials and the ways that this handbook of life, this unwritten law, this is the way things are supposed to be. It doesn't have to be this way. There's nobody telling us. There's nobody enforcing things. You have a choice to just drop it all, leave the rat race and say goodbye, or just take a little vacation from it and see how you feel. Well, I think we're definitely going to do a part 2 on this thing because I got a lot more to say on this. And hopefully I've inspired you guys. If I have, please let me know if you guys want me to do what you guys want to hear about. I think we're going to do on how to get started living essential because I think this is very important. I'm kind of giddy today of the freedom that I'm feeling, both financially, inspirationally, spiritually. Seeing the emerald green ocean today just recharged my batteries, feeling the wind and smelling the salts in the air, seeing the wild birds and seeing nobody on the beach because everybody's off working, doing unessential things. Well, I'm reaping the benefits here, having the whole entire ocean. I live in San Diego, California, people. And this is a very populated, very, very popular place, a very popular area where I went. There's nobody on the beach. I get to enjoy those things, and that's what I want for each individual, for you guys. I know there's a lot of people suffering and a lot of bad things, people wanting to basically get out of this world. And guys, it's the world that you create. It's by utilizing such things as essentialism, where you can actually create the reality, the world, and physical and both mentally and spiritually that you prefer. So you have the choice, guys. You need to make it. Nobody can do that for you. You've got to make that choice on yourself. I'm here offering you guys some of these tools and inspiration and this philosophies on, hey, we can change everything. And I'm not just a seller of it. I actually live it. So I'm not even selling anything. That's the message today. Guys, if I brought you guys any value, please like and subscribe. It fires me up. You guys got to understand, it's like talking to a wall when you're doing especially solo shows. And you don't know if anybody's out there or not. There's no way to tell. So please hit that like button, subscribe, share this show. Help me get the show off the ground because we have a lot of good messages, a lot of good things, philosophies, tips, tricks, and just flat out, hopefully entertainment, edutainment, as I like to call it, that's going to get you guys off the ground, change your lives, help you guys to help yourselves. So as I always say, guys, go out there and have yourself a near life experience. Don't lose your muchness. Carry on the fire and human up, my friends.